Welcome to another episode of Mediocre Dads. I'm your host, Queon. I go by Q, of course. And on this episode of Mediocre Dads, as usual, I have a guest. And like I said last time, it feels good to finally say as usual. If you're new to Mediocre Dads, welcome. In the beginning of Mediocre Dads, we did not have guests on as much as we wanted to. It's kind of just my friends or whatever the case might be. But now, if you've been watching some of my videos, you've been keeping up with Mediocre Dads, you know that we have guests on more frequently, if most of the time, truthfully now. So it's a blessing. I have to thank God because without him, none of this would have been possible. But I am appreciative of all these things that happened to me, and then I'm able to have a guest and talk to other people, especially other fathers and other dads, and get their knowledge and their wisdom and their experiences to not only make myself better, but also to make you guys better. And as usual, guys, being mediocre is a choice. You have to refuse to be mediocre. So getting right into it with my guest, his name is Jay. And, as I tell you guys every time, all of my guests have their own experiences and their own stories. And, they hit you a little differently and they impact you differently. And they, like I said, some of them might stay in your head or live in your head rent free, and not in a way of just like, in a bad way, but in a way of like, man, I'm always going to remember that. And for me, I always try to remember the stories or the experiences that people tell me or teach me, because you can always pull something from there. You can always learn something, and learning is a lifetime thing. It's not just a momentarily thing where we go to school and we learn what we're supposed to and then we stop learning. No, it's a lifetime thing, an event that you're always doing and always acquiring new knowledges and experiences. But without me getting too deep into that, right? I'm really excited for this guest to be on here, guys. Like I said, his name's Jay. He is a dad, and he is a grief empowerment coach. And so we're going to get into the coaching side and what he does and how he has, through his experiences in the story, he's adapted that his own grief to turn it into something powerful and positive. And we'll get into that towards the end, and all the links for him and contacting him will be at the bottom. But first and foremost, Jay, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
No problem, Q. First off, thank you. My name is Jay Lewis III, but everybody calls me Jay. I'm a grief empowerment coach. My situation is interesting because I fell into grief empowerment coaching. It was something I went through after I had the loss of my wife in 2016. I'd been married to this woman for 17 years. We've been together
Wow,
26.
that's awesome.
You know, I have two beautiful daughters. I mean, one will be 26 in May. The other one will be 23 in August. And first off, that's crazy enough because I'm sitting here like, I'm really old. That's the first thing I'm looking at.
Oh
But
man.
the reality of anything is being a father is just so incredible because you have an opportunity to walk through the lives of your children and to help to mold them, shape them. They're going to go their own way, but they will take your tutelage, and it usually will come in this form. They'll get a phone call or they'll drop by and they'll seem casual, but then they'll turn around and say, Dad, how'd you do this? Dad, how'd you do that? And in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, you're going through this one. you
Mm-hmm.
know?
I used to
But
do that to my dad all the time. I would just casually be like, I would call him up acting like there's nothing going on in my life. And I'd be
right,
like, hey, Pops, I got a question for you. He's like, yeah, what's going on? I was like, how do you do A, B, and C? And he was like, oh man, you just kind of do this and then do it for me. I was like, oh, sweet, sweet. He's like, is everything all right? I was like, nah, yeah, nah. A friend of mine, he was asking me, and I was like, I told him to call my dad because my dad knows or whatever. Knowing damn well, I was taking notes and been like, oh, okay, I got to remember
that's
to do
right.
this. I got to do this. This is how I got to do this, because I didn't want him to worry. But yeah, I did the same thing to my dad.
I mean, it's a reality. And for a father, it's actually a rite of passage
Mm-hmm.
because it makes your dad feel good to know that, you know what? He's needed. He's a child will come back and ask for assistance. And again, it's not like the handout anymore. It's more, it's more questioning. And now you're speaking on more of a equidistant plane. It's two adults having a conversation, and it's different. I remember when my youngest daughter, she blessed me with the most incredible vacation. Incredible. She was doing a study abroad program in Ireland, and my birthday was coming up. She calls me. She said, "Dad, check the email," because she knows I don't really know. So I checked the email. I looked, and there was a ticket to Ireland. Then she put an itinerary together. So we went from Ireland to France. We went to Amsterdam, Spain, came back. And I was like, now, it was definitely a trip that I wanted to take with my wife because we
Hmm.
had always talked about, you know, just trips around Europe and doing that. My daughter realized that. And her being, in Ireland, first of all, she was terrified in the beginning, being out of the country and all, but very easily fell into a group of people that she liked a lot. And there were a lot of people that were obviously from the States that were doing the same type of program. But she met so many people from the home country, and she was excited for me to actually come there. I remember, like, I don't drink at all. The first place she takes me to is a pub. Now I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, so now I'm gonna have to break ranks, come in, and I'll come in with her. And what's interesting is there were these guys playing music, and all of a sudden he just stopped. And one guy says, "Who is that with you? Who's that?" And she goes, "That's my father." And the guy goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I apologize." I said, "No, no, no. I really appreciate that because that lets me know that there's someone looking out for my daughter in my absence." And I absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so next thing you know, they start sending me top shelf liquor, and I'm like, "Oh God, no, I can't do this," you know. But then again, I'm in Ireland. Everybody drinks. When I used to drink, Guinness was my favorite beer.
Yeah.
So I was like, "There's no way I can go. I can be here in Ireland and not go to the Guinness factory."
Yeah.
So, needless to say, sorry to your audience, I was a little hammered. But anyway, it didn't take much to get me hammered. Now I
Yeah.
can say that. But again, it's those type of things. They they remember subconsciously, or their whole thing is, I want to pay him back for everything he's done for me. You know, of course, you do have some children that don't quite see it that way, but when a parent, especially a father, because we as fathers don't always get the credit we deserve. You know, our whole thing is we're supposed to be strong for everyone.
Hmm.
We're supposed to make sure that everyone else is taken care of. And that happens, unfortunately, at the behest of our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health. We end up sometimes breaking down and being frustrated because we feel like, well, we don't get we don't get the things we felt that we've given all our lives. We don't get any of them back. But again, off air, we talked about the fact life is about shifting your perspective on these things. You see, the things you don't think you get back, you need to look at them differently. Because if your children are healthy, they have a great family structure, they're doing things to advance themselves forward, they have taken all of your knowledge. They may not demonstrate that to you, but they've taken it and they're utilizing it. Look at it that way. And when you look at it that way, you no longer have to be upset and feeling that you're being slighted in some way, because ultimately you're not. You're only being slighted if you tell yourself that. We talked about the mind. Well, the mind will accommodate you.
Yeah.
However you feel is exactly the way it'll be. I I heard Will Smith say this. It was funny. He said, the man who can and the man who can't is the same man. It's an old African proverb he was talking about.
Hmm.
And and I'm like, that is so real, because depending on the type of person you choose to be, if you choose to be a defeatist, that's what life is going to give you. Every aspect of being defeated and feeling defeated, everything becomes a why did this happen to me type of concept. My my program, the grief empowerment theory, it shifts that by simply saying that you have to look at life differently. You can't look at life the way life wants you to look at it. Life wants you to follow the program of roughly 98% of the population. I want you to say, look, man, you don't fit in the crowd. You should fit in the crowd. And why aren't you? You know, instead of saying to yourself, why am I not taking the Malcolm Gladwell approach? Why am I not being an outlier? Why am I not looking to become a leader? Why am I looking to fold into the pack just to make sure that you know, I'm not different than everyone else?
Well, to be young is to be accepted, you know. So, and that's not obviously what that means, but for a lot of young people, that's what it is. To be young is to be accepted, and to be accepted means you are you're normal. You know what I mean? And I think young people enjoy being or being seen as normal rather than the outlier, because they don't, because we, coming up in grade school and all that, I think that's what everyone likes to do, is like, hey, I want to be a part of the group, right? But then as you get older, especially for me personally, I started to realize being an outlier, as you said, is where you want to be. That is where the magic happens, if you will. That is where
Yeah.
things start to change in your life, where you're like, nah, this is where I want to be. This is the place in which I think I can really strive in. And then sure enough, you'll start to attract more people to you, and you will no longer be an outlier. But I think it's a young people thing, and so.
Well, you know what? Think about this, Q. We all have to go through that period.
Mhm.
We have to go through that. Look, man, I remember when I was young, it was like, look, if I didn't have a certain superhero lunchbox, like everybody
Mhm.
else did, there was a problem. If I didn't have a certain pair of jeans, like everybody else did, that was a problem. You know, it's not until, to be honest with you, it's not until you run into some type of situation that changes the landscape of your life that you realize that fitting in the group might not be the best for you. There's nothing wrong with being a member of the herd if you feel that you're going to have safety in that group, but also understand that you won't do anything dynamic
Yeah.
being in the center of the group. A lot of people think that having so many followers and having so many friends, all that's important. That does play a role, because as humans, we want to be members of society. That's a part of our lexicon. But the reality is there is a difference between those that want to be, again, in the pack, and those that want to be some sort of outlier. And that does come with age. I mean,
Yes.
there are only a few. I think there are a few people that are probably sub 25 that see things different. Like, I can't remember Greta. I can't remember her last name, but she is a big ecologist type of person. She wants to save the whales. She wants to stop with, but she started this at like 13.
Talking about Greta Thunberg?
Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about her is she has made the decision to go away from the pack.
Yeah.
And the average kid her age is, they're gonna throw a plastic bottle away somewhere. They're gonna, they don't really, they're saving the whales is not all that important. But she made that decision at the early age. Some people will find their niche early in their life. I mean, it's not everyone, but it does mean that at some point she clearly listened to her parents, her
Yeah.
mom or dad,
Mhm.
because somebody gave her that mindset
Yeah.
to do that. But again, it's without going too far, it just comes with age.
Yeah. No, I
It
got you.
comes with learning over time. So
Yeah.
you know,
So I
I,
want go ahead. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you, how old are your kids?
My kids are my oldest is 5 going on 6. She'll be 6 here in the next couple weeks. And then my youngest is a year and a half. So,
God bless you.
yeah.
I've been through that, so that's why I said God bless
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no, and
You
that's
know,
why the last night in the hotel was a little rough because the 6-year-old less than my year and a half, but they both enjoy sleeping next to mom and dad or whatever, and when they get the opportunity to, you know what I mean. So like being in a hotel room, we got 2 queen size beds or whatever, and so I'm sleeping with my oldest and my wife's sleeping with the youngest, but they both thrive. They're like, oh my goodness, it's cuddle time and all that. So like like I said, it was a long night because they wouldn't go to sleep. They thought it was a fun time. But I wanted to kind of go back real quick and kind of ask you. You kind of mentioned it, but I know one of the reasons in which I really wanted to kind of talk to you more was about how you had the unfortunate passing of your wife. You said in 2000, and so if you don't mind going into kind of the story, what happened with that, what led up to that, and then kind of the aftermath of that, the immediate aftermath of that.
I mean, it was Easter Day, 2016. She started feeling sick.
Mm.
Now, she had cooked an incredible meal for family, friends. We had everybody come to the house. So I was like, well, maybe you're just tired. Lay down, it's okay. She's a perfectly healthy person, school teacher, everything of that nature. Later on that day, maybe about an hour or so, she had taken a shower, lay back down, took her temperature, and it was elevated. It was up to 100. So for the first time, this was literally the first time. My wife, like I said, she's a school teacher. She was a kindergarten teacher. Now, if anybody knows a school teacher, they are like Navy SEALs. They never get sick.
Nope, never. They are
Never.
battling sicknesses, and they're just like, nah, I'm good. I ain't gonna get that.
Right, right. And so when she said she wasn't feeling good, she goes, I think I need to go to the hospital. I was really concerned at that point. So, luckily the hospital was only about like 3 or 4 miles away. So took her to the hospital. And my mother-in-law lives across the street from us. So I called my mother-in-law. I said, well, come with me. My my niece was at the house. So she was like, well, I'll watch the girls. You go ahead. So we go there, and just like I'm talking to you, I'm talking to my wife. She was like, well, I'm just not feeling that good. And again, you don't know quite how bad a person's feeling,
Mm-hmm.
especially a person that hides sickness.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was good at doing that. And she goes, well, you know what? I'm probably going to take the day off and give me your laptop. I was working on thesis for another degree. And so I gave her my laptop, and she contacted the school. Then she says to me, she goes, go home because my niece has children. She was like, you go home. relieve her. We'll call you when we're done, because they were in the waiting room. So I tell my mother-in-law, I said, well, just give me a call. Let me know if there's anything. About 5 in the morning, she calls me. And she's barely audible. I couldn't understand anything she said except for one thing. She said, Kim is brain dead. You need to come here now. I ran to my neighbors and I begged them to just please watch the girls. I gotta go to the hospital. I don't know what's going on. I get to the hospital and my mother-in-law is just laying on the floor, like prostrate. And I'm like, where's Kim? What's going on? And all she could do is point. She points to this room, and I go to this room, and they got the infectious disease tent all up, and there were some nurses that were sitting there in front of the tent. And one nurse says to the other, I heard her. She goes, I'm not going there. I don't know what she has. And then the other nurse sees me, and she says, I think that's her husband. And I said, yeah, what's going on? And immediately, the doctor comes out, and the doctor explains that Kim had some form of pneumonia combined with the flu, which I thought was weird because she had just had a flu shot earlier that month. Again, when you're a kindergarten teacher, you're going to get your flu shot. So she goes, the doctor says, well, during the time of us looking at her, she started having a seizure, and that seizure prompted us to have emergency surgery because her lung had started to collapse. So they were addressing that, and then she had a heart attack in the middle of this situation. Somehow there was a constriction of airflow, and that constriction of airflow is what caused her to become brain damaged. So now the doctor is telling me, he's like, she had a lung collapse, heart attack. They had to give her a pint of blood, and she's brain dead. I said, hold on a second. I had just seen this woman at 11 o'clock. She was fine. I mean, she was sick, but she wasn't on death's door sick. And then he says to me, he goes, Mr. Clark, we have to move her to another hospital, to our sister hospital, because with her lung having collapsed, we don't have the tools to be able to monitor her heart, address her brain, and help her with her lungs. So we drove down to another hospital, and I was introduced to a machine. Pre-COVID, I was introduced to something called an ECMO machine. And if you follow COVID at all, a lot of people were talking about the ECMO machine. What the ECMO machine does, it's designed to help the lungs breathe as the lungs self-heal, because the lungs do have a self-healing capacity. So she was on this machine. Then they had to induce a coma. She ended up having another heart attack, second lung collapse. And now I'm sitting here, and all I could think about was the fact that I'm going to lose my wife. I'm going to lose the girl of my life. I met her when I was at Hampton University at 18, and we have been together ever since. And it was just like, she's now 44 years old at this point. Actually 43, because her birthday was April 2nd, a few days later. And she hadn't made 44 yet. What was crazy was when 44 hit, I had to bring the girls with me. We went to the hospital, and obviously we couldn't bring in any fresh flowers. So my wife was a school teacher, so we had tons of like paper mache and pipe cleaners and all kinds of stuff, and those little marble-like things. So we made a nice little flowers in a vase, type of thing for her, I I didn't think that that was going to be roughly the last time I was going to see her. I mean, she had survived for about a month and a half before her blood pressure crashed below a level that they could not bring back.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately I was in a situation because years before, about 3 years before, her and I had a conversation. And the conversation was, if I'm ever on machines or anything like that, don't keep me on machines. Take me off. The reason why was because, unfortunately, her sister had passed away from the disease of lupus, and her parents kept her on a machine. And Kim and her sister were thick as thieves, so she didn't. When that happened, She didn't want the same thing. When she was confronted with that illness, a lot of her family wanted to keep her on machines. I had to make the executive decision with the doctor to do a DNR, and everyone was livid. They were livid. I mean, I was called things like Dr. Working, and I was everything. But I knew what she wanted. I knew what she wanted, and nobody else. That's something I want to explain to people as well. When you do go through this type of circumstance, everyone else is their heart is based on the person they know. They want to keep that person alive. They want to keep hope alive. And I understood that. But I also looked at the condition of my wife. She was not the same person at all. Even if she was to come back, the doctor said that she was on so many drugs, like they had her on Demerol and fentanyl to help ease the pain. They said that the chances of her recovering from the brain issue were slight. And this was a smart woman. This was a woman with a master's degree, everything. When I made that decision, it hurt my heart so much because I knew that I was sending my girl to her final rest. I knew it. But another part of me said, if I don't do this, she will not be happy being the shell of a person she was.
Mm.
It took the mouths of babes to truly get me more settled. I went home and I spoke to both my daughters, and I said to them, Mommy's not good. They were, at the time, they were 13 and 17. And I said, I don't know if Mommy's gonna make it out of this. And my youngest daughter, she said, Daddy, if Mommy wants you to let her go, let her go. My oldest daughter, she reiterated that, and she said, Daddy, I know everybody is telling you that you're a monster. I know everybody's telling you you're not a good person. But we know. So I made that decision. And, I'm blessed because knowing that something like that happens, it allows you to do two things. It allows you to be a person who allows the circumstance to overtake you, or it allows you to be a person who can find a way to use this challenge as a fuel that allow you to move forward. Now, don't get me wrong, it took a long time. It took me years. I mean, I the reason why I don't drink now is because I was such a drinker. Because I was between drinking, smoking so much weed, I just wanted to do everything I could to take away the pain. What I didn't realize was that the minute I sobered up, I only had one or two choices. Go get drunk and high again, or deal with the monster of grief. And you make the monster larger every time you sober up from your situation. Because now what you wanted to take away the pain has only increased tenfold because now you become an addict. And that's really what I was. I mean, I was addicted to drinking. I was drinking morning, noon, and night. It was ruining my relationship with my children. It was ruining my self-worth. It was ruining me physically. One day, I had this incredible epiphany. Incredible. That morning, God spoke to me. I'm serious about that. And I'm convinced of that because I hear this voice in my head, and I'm like, he's like, yo, man, you gotta do something. My youngest daughter comes in from school, and I had cigarette butts all over the floor. I had weed blunts all over the place, and I would like half a thing of Hennessy. She looks at me and says, Dad, you gotta do something. Same thing that I heard the voice say. So I ended up dumping the last of my liquor, dumping out the last of the weed that I had, jumped in the shower. Put it this way, I'm bald, but I hadn't shaved in probably a week. Now, let me explain something to you. I am not bald on purpose. Well, I am now. But before, well, I was bald by nature. And, but I wasn't bald. I was, I'm going to date myself. But back in the day, there was a TV show called The Jeffersons.
I know the Jeffersons, yeah.
And, okay, there was a guy named Sherman
Mm-hmm.
Hemsley. I looked like him when I wasn't shaved. So I ended up, I shaved, I jumped in the shower. I was in tears, but I was cleaned up. I looked different. Then I checked my computer because I worked in the insurance field at this time. So I checked my computer portal, and there is a client wanted to do a burial policy. So I called him, and eventually we secured the time. I go to see him, and he's got this look on his face, kid. I know this look. So I asked him, I said, have you lost anybody recently? What's the situation? And he said, well, older guy. He goes, yeah, I've been with my wife 40 years, and 2 months ago she passed away. And then his statement to me was, but you're a young guy, man. You don't know anything about that.
Wow.
And I said, I had just lost my wife. Oh, I put down my insurance stuff, talking to the guy because I knew his look, that look of what am I going to do now? All right, he said he had been with his wife 40 years. Waking up next to her was crazy for him. We're talking, we're sharing stories, and it's interesting because of like-minded individuals, tribe starts to form. Your true tribe starts to form. At the end of the meeting, now mind you, in the insurance world, if you're not out of there in 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to lose the sale. I was in there about 2 hours and didn't even bother to ask the guy if he wanted this particular insurance policy. I ended up hugging this guy. I never hugged a client in my life. And then he says to me, he goes, are you sure you're supposed to be selling this insurance? You sure you ain't supposed to be doing something different? And I said, yeah, come on, man. I've been doing this all my life. This is what I do. But then I got in the car and I started thinking about what he said. Kind of blew it off, but
Yeah.
Then I go home and I say, well, I'm down here in Texas now. I wanted to show up my insurance business down here. So I said, I need to build a website. I don't really know how to do it, but you know what? Wix.com I heard about. So I went to Wix and I started built this website. And then YouTube is funny because they will send you commercials. And I got this commercial that said, you might want to, life coaching is a way to look at things. And, you can use your experience. You don't necessarily need to be a PhD and blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, I've been through a lot of stuff, man. I could do that. Just kind of blew that off, started working on myself, went back to sleep. And then that voice in my head again. And it was like, you said you could do it. We'll figure out how to do it. So I get up, and now I changed the website from an insurance related website to a motivational website. Because at the beginning of what I was doing, I was thinking about just motivational speaking and things like that. It was a horrible website. I'll tell you that right now. And Lord knows. But it was the beginning stages.
Yeah.
Then the very next day, I got the call from that guy. And he goes, I still want that policy. So he was the very last policy I ever did.
Oh, wow.
And ever since then, figuring out how to do this. This way. I had no experience in this arena because even though I had people pass away, I wasn't that core person. When my wife died, I became that core person. I became that person that had to learn how to cook. Like, put it this way, I tell everybody all the time, I said, man, before I learned how to cook, I couldn't even boil water right.
Letting it boil too long.
But yeah, man, it was always going to the bottles. Like, yo, man, what at? It was like, but what was interesting was I learned how to cook, and for me, it became therapeutic. It became a way I can just put my headphones on, get the world out for just a few moments, concentrate on making food. And that came about because my daughter comes in again. She plays soccer. And she was like, Daddy, you know what? I'm hungry. And I had just had one of my neighbors came by with a lasagna. So I was like, perfect. I'm feeling like the hero dad. I'm like, all right, no problem. Cut up lasagna, put it on a plate. She looked at me and was very colorful with the way she was like, Daddy, if I have to eat this again, I'm going to kill someone. And trust me, there were a lot of colorful metaphors in between that. Now she's 13, and at first I'm a little offended, but then I also realized just 6 weeks ago, this child's mother died, and she's just trying to figure out the best way she can in her 13-year-old mind. I had to let those things go. So we ended up going to the store. We settled on tacos. Tacos was my first meal. I always say thank God for Ortega because trust me, I had a little meal kit, all that set up. So we did the taco thing, and what made me decide that cooking was where I wanted to go was that night, for the first time in about 6 weeks, I saw that kid laugh.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, if I keep that smile on her face, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So, for like 2 weeks straight, all I was doing was watching cooking channels. Gordon Ramsay was my friend, and when Lugosi was my friend, all these people, Bear Grylls, I was learning it all. And then one of my friends had sent me a coupon for Blue Apron. So I started with the Blue Apron package and, designing meals that way too. And then I started kind of getting cocky and was like, yo, I'm good. Just put them on Facebook and stuff like that. Okay, look what I learned to do. My oldest daughter, who was at Hampton, she was at my alma mater, and she calls and she's like, Daddy, I just saw this stuff on Facebook. Are you cooking this? And I'm like, yeah, Daddy's making it. She was like, all right, Daddy, I'm coming up with 2 more friends. I want you to make this, this, and this. So I did. And she comes up. My youngest daughter invited one of her friends. So my oldest daughter has her 2 friends. It's 5 kids at my table. And I'm just cooking away. Luckily, it was still the Mexican thing. My oldest daughter was cool on Mexican. So it was like, okay, cool. But ended up where I made so much food, I thought they were going to take it with them. You know, because, I mean, college, going to take it
Yeah.
back. But they ate it
Oh
all.
man.
And then I heard one of my daughter's friends say, yeah, your dad put his foot in there. He did his thing with it. I just went into the bathroom and for real, Q, I started crying because it's like, I had, listen, when you lose somebody and you don't know where you're going, I felt like invalidated because, again, I lost my entire friends group because my friends group they were attached to the couple that me and Kim were. That changed when she died. And then when people assumed that I was okay with letting her go, then all of a sudden now people were against me. So I felt like I was in a world by myself. Cooking gave me the avenue to allow me to, like I said, put my headphones on, spend time making food, being happy. The fact that my children validated me, helped me to feel better. And then from there, that's when I started looking at the shifting perspectives. That's kind of the beginning of where the grief empowerment theory came. Because then I started looking at other people who have done similar things. I researched Buster Douglas because Douglas knocked out
Mm-hmm.
Tyson. I was like, how did he do this? You know, come to find, 2 days before the fight, he lost his
Mm-hmm.
mother. You know, she told him he was going to knock out Tyson. Then I found out a week before that, he found out his son's mother was suffering from ovarian cancer. Then, about a month and a half before that, he had just finalized a divorce. The same 2 nights before the fight, he received notice from his promoters that he was a 42-1 underdog against Tyson. So this guy had 4 sets of grief against him. Gets knocked down by Tyson, which is crazy that he beat the bell. And when he got back up, he remembered what his mother said. He looked at all that grief that he experienced and he found a way to use it to his advantage to take care of Tyson. Now, with the grief empowerment theory, I also metaphorically use concepts related to physics. I say, I don't know if people are familiar with, in physics, there's a law called the conservation of energy. And in that law, it states that energy can never die. It cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed, but it can be manipulated. So the outside grief that Buster Douglas was feeling, along with the grief that was in his mind, because the brain produces immense amounts of energy and manifests in the amygdala region and the limbic regions of our brain. It manifests into emotions, the happiness, the joy, the sadness. And those cadre of emotions that come with grief can be manipulated. Now, it can serve as an anchor to keep us down, to keep us stagnant, or we can find a way to shift that, repackage that negative energy into a fuel that will allow us to do some miraculous things. And Douglas is just one person. Like, there are so many people. I researched a lot of people that have done this. Like, I talk to people about the story of Eric Clapton. Now, Clapton lost his 4-year-old son. His son fell out of a window, 25 floors. That almost cost this man, who was probably one of the world's best guitarists, to want to hang up music. But he ended up writing one song, and that song was an homage to his young son Connor. He was honoring Connor with that song. The song was called Tears in Heaven. That song ended up debuting on the soundtrack to a movie called Rush. It ended up winning him 3 Grammys, became a multi-platinum success. Then it's now listed by Rolling Stone magazine as one of the top 500 songs of all
Wow.
time. Now, that song never would have been written if Connor had not died. What Clapton had to do was to combine the outside grief, because when you're a popular person, you already know the world either thinks they know everything about you or wants to know
Yep.
everything about you. So he had to deal with that. And then he had to deal with the loss of his only son also in a gruesome way.
Mhm.
He brought that together. And like I said, metaphorically speaking, he didn't know he was doing it, but hey, the grief empowerment theory worked to his advantage. He took that negative energy and repurposed it to become this incredible hit song. You know, and I can go on for days with people that have done
So,
this.
Eric had, he had the song, right? That helped him really, I wouldn't say it wouldn't not get over it, but kind of helped him get through that moment of, or to get
Get
through the
through it.
grief, right, that he was experiencing. Buster had the, fighting Tyson and getting knocked down to more or less help get through that grief. For you, was the coaching, was doing the coaching thing, was that your boxing match, your fight with Tyson?
It morphed into
Mm-hmm.
that. And again, first it was cooking, and then it was,
Mm-hmm.
speaking. And I didn't really get clients for some time, because I was new to this game. I didn't really
Yeah.
know. But my speaking helped me to retain clients. So I now let people know. And also, I let people know that this is in stages. You cannot have immediately lost someone and think that you're going to do this grief empowerment theory
Yeah.
thing. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
way. You have to go through stages. The first stage is usually the, oh my God, this has happened. How am I going to get through it? And you probably spend a good year in those waters. And after some time, you get tired of being sick and tired
Mm-hmm.
of allowing the grief to just win. And you say to yourself, what can I do? And that's when a person like me comes in and I say, there are opportunities in this chaos. There's always a blessing in the broken pieces. You just have to look for them. Now, you are going to cut your hand, but that's all representative of growth, of the process. You're going to have to go through this. You are going to have to get rid of the old person that you used to be in order to make room for this new person that life has created for you to be.
What was that? Sorry, go
What?
ahead.
No, no,
So,
please finish.
you kind of walk through, your experience from when the time that your wife unfortunately passed, which, by the way, I am sorry for your loss. You walk through that and all the way to the point where you are now. What about your daughters? What were your daughters going through, right? Because you did mention how you were in that state for some time, and then you heard the voice say, almost like, "Hey, get up." You know what I mean? Almost like God, Jesus telling Lazarus to come out, walk out of that tomb, right? It's almost like, "Hey, get up." You got responsibilities, you got things to get done, and I have something, I have a plan for you. So, but for your daughters, though, right? What was that? Could you kind of explain what was that like for them? What were they going through? How did you help them get through their own form of grief?
You know what? It really, it was more of the fact that we end up becoming a tighter unit. It wasn't me helping them get through it. It was more or less them honestly helping me to
Mm-hmm.
get through it. My youngest daughter, she just despised the way that I was. And rightly
Mm.
so. I mean, I was a mess. My oldest daughter, I think I ignored her because she was at my alma mater. I remember when I dropped her off, and that day was crazy for me because I'm walking around campus and I just remember all the places me and their mother used to hang out. You know, I'm crying every step of the way. And I was so blessed because my oldest daughter's roommate, her mother was there. Uh, and I explained to her that I am so sorry. I'm just going through. So I told her the story. And she said, you know what, Mr. Clark? Yeah, my last name's Clark. She said, don't worry about it. I got this. You go ahead. I spent the rest of the day just kind of walking around campus, and my oldest daughter, she was like, Daddy, why don't you come down? Like, there were so many times she was like, come on down, come hang out. And I didn't want to make that 6 hour trip
Mm.
anymore. I used to make it with their mother, and it was hard. It wasn't until she got out of school that she was like, Daddy, I understand exactly what you were going through. I know what you were going through. She lives back up around, we're from New Jersey. She lives back up in Jersey. And she was like, look, you know, I made I made it through, I'm an adult. I got this. She was like, you're gonna you'll be fine. And when I started talking to her about the fact that I was doing the grief coaching thing, and she was like, that's actually, it's interesting that that's something you wanted to do because before all this, I was a pretty selfish person. I really
Mm.
was. It wasn't about anybody else but me. Life has to humble you. And I had to realize that I unfortunately had to lose my wife in order to be humble. But it's the way things
Yeah.
are. And you have to learn how to work through them. So, like I said, I let my clients know. I let people I speak to know. I let when I do motivational speak, I let them know. It's very easy to allow life to beat you down. It's very easy. Unfortunately, the immediate ease is becoming a long-term version of regret because you're always saying, I should have done this. I wish I had done that. The other course of action is to go through the pain now in order to possibly have a better future. Not going through it is a guarantee of a bad future.
Mm.
Doing it is a possibility of a better future. And when you shift your mind to believe that it's going to be better, you're heading in that forward direction. That means when the headwinds come, you're going to manage them. They're going to set you
Yeah.
back. I mean, even now, still, I have issues where there are some days where things are interesting, you know, but the reality is that I've learned over some time that I can't stay there. There is a time period to feel that because feeling it lets you know you're alive still. And it's not the type of pain you want, but it is the type of pain you need because it's that pain that, like we said earlier, it's the one that tells you to get up.
Mm.
It's the one that says, look, you have a choice. You can stay anchored if you want, but this hurts and you know it hurts. Or you can get back up. Yes, you went through something. It was painful, but what have you learned along the journey that you are taking? That's another thing that I explain to people. Life is not, don't be end game oriented, be journey oriented.
Yeah.
The end game is the box. You don't want to look forward to the box. You want to look forward to the journey because along the journey, you get to meet so many people. Like I was having another podcast with a person and I said something to you, Q. If my wife had not passed away, I would not have the honor of having this conversation with you. You know, there are people in your audience that need to hear that there is a way. You're going to fight, and don't be upset when things don't go your way, because they're not going to go your way. But it doesn't mean that you throw in the towel. It just means that you reroute, adapt, and figure out what you need to do and learn to do it your way. Don't try to do it in a way that you've been taught or that people expect you to do it. Their way may not be
Sarah.
your way. And if it works for you and you're not hurting anybody in the process, then understand that that method is the one you should be using to help you move forward. You know, and again, this is the reason why I have shifted my mind from the perspective of, God, why did this happen? Why'd you take my wife? To, okay, I now have taken more of an Eric Clapton approach, honoring my wife. My goal is to shift the minds of 1 million people to believe they can use the challenges of grief to their advantage. And, you know, I know there are motivational speakers that say stuff like, you know, you just got to get up. You got to figure out. The Grief Empowerment Program is an opportunity to walk a person through it. Tell them some days are going to be better than others. Some days are going to be worse. But it's like the stock market. Every day, it's not going to keep going up. Some days it's going to go down. But you need to understand the ebb and flow. And over time is where your return comes. It's the same thing when you are facing a situation that changes your entire landscape. You now have to look at things differently. You now have to understand that, sure, that works for them over there, but them over there, they're married with 2 kids, they're doing their thing. I'm a solo parent. And it's funny, I do a podcast with a widow. Her name is Kate. That podcast is called Happily Ever After. And it's just 2 people talking about, you know, the changes they've gone through being a widow. And she said, I always identify myself as a single parent. And she said, no, you're not a single parent. She goes, you are a solo parent. And I said, well, what's the difference? And she said, well, a single parent, it doesn't even matter if the father or mother's not around. You can contact the law. You can contact somebody to help facilitate change as a solo parent. The only thing you can do is go to the graveyard and pray to the Lord for strength and ask your wife to watch over you and the kids. That's all you can do.
Man.
And I'm like, it's crazy, but it's, when you make that choice, because you're going to be scared, it's going to be death defying. But the other choice is to act like you're not going to be scared and wait for the fear to just jump on you. And that becomes, that combined with the grief becomes an 800-pound gorilla that you cannot move. But, you know, I heard Lisa Nichols say something. She said, you know, if it doesn't scare you just a little bit, then it's not big enough anyway.
I like that.
So I had to realize that the fear that I was going through, I had to shift it. Churchill said this, which is crazy. He goes, fear is a reaction. Courage is a choice. It's a decision. I had to realize that, do I want fear to overtake me, or do I want to make the decision to be courageous? And in making that decision, I'm honoring my wife. I know I want to shift the minds of at least 1 million people to know that they can use grief to their advantage. And that's the way I want to honor her. Well, that means I'm going to have to be courageous because most of the world doesn't believe this. So that means you need to figure out what you need to do. And I realized that I had to get out of worrying about getting likes and getting all these different things and getting all it. I don't have the background. You know, this is not something I decided to do when I left college. I mean, I got a degree in communication. I worked in the insurance field, you know, and I was not planning on going back to school to get, you know, like a PhD or a master's
Yeah,
in psychology. But I also realized that God positioned me because I have a talent for communicating with people, speaking with people, and letting them know that the things you've gone through are things you have gone through. See, grief, you are not grief. Grief is an event. What has happened during a grief situation, that is not you. That is just the event that has happened. Now, how are you going to react or respond to the event?
that is.
And that's
No, I was just gonna
correct.
say that is it's one of those things, when we go through different things in our lives, and we, the best example I can give, I use a personal example, I guess, is in the military, right? We plan for, we plan to be in combat situations. We plan to be in different situations and different things. But then what's crazy is, your plan goes to crap, when first contact happens. And so it's a weird experience that happens, is because we all have a plan until until first contact. So I find it interesting, but I do want to say, hey, I am very appreciative that you came on. I'm very appreciative that you told you could express your story and tell your story. And truthfully, when I was reading some what you messaged you had sent me, kind of going through it, I was like, man, I didn't know like some of those details. It's a powerful story, and you know, sometimes I get nervous because I'm like, man, do people really want to come on here and tell a story such as that? Because like it's I know it's a personal story, but I think I'm grateful that you were willing to come on here, tell your story, and give hope to people out there who are experiencing, grief in different facets, and different things are going through. I do have a friend, I would call her a friend, in the military, who lost her husband, and she's a solo mom, and so she's trying to she's navigating that, and it's been, I think it's been just over a year or a couple of years now. I'm not too sure, but I you could see, some sad days, but you can also see the happy days. You can see the smile on her face, and those different things. And so, I understand from the outside looking in, because I personally haven't gone through something grief like that. But like I said, I understand, I see, and it's like you said, it ebbs and flows. But it's one of those things where you just, you attack it every day to do your best, do the best that you can. So, but
Exactly.
hey Jay, I really appreciate you coming on. You know, before
Overall.
we go, where can people find you? Where can they get a hold of you if they want, if they're going through something, or they want to just talk to you? Where can they get a hold of you?
Okay. I am on almost every social media. I'm on TikTok, at J Lewis
Mhm.
3. J Lewis 3 Motivation. Same thing with Instagram, Facebook,
Awesome.
LinkedIn. I keep it simple. Also, you can go to
Mhm.
my website, jl3motivation.com.
Awesome.
That way, you can send me a message and, we can talk. We can set up some time. I can schedule you in and we can have a conversation. Find out, what it is that we can do to help you get to the next level. I might not be the person for you. You might need to seek a
Mhm.
therapist. You might need to seek somebody. But what I like to do is at least have that conversation with you So find out where you are first and then address from
Got you.
there.
Awesome. All of his links will be in the description below, so you guys have access to those, and you can check them out and see some more of his stuff. Like I said, it's a powerful story that he has, and while it is a story, it's his experience that he's sharing and how he was able to get out of a hole, get out of that ditch, if you will, to kind of get back on his feet, and then just and you make turn a bad thing into a more positive thing, But anyway, guys, hey, thank you for joining us on this episode, and be on the lookout for another one because I'm always having more guests on. But without further ado, that's all I got for you. We're here. Being mediocre is a choice. You got to refuse to be mediocre. That's all I got. Mediocre Dads out.